And I thought it was only fitting for our esteemed Mayor Matt Ryan, who has been a very proud and progressive voice on the issue of fracking, to introduce our guest speaker, who's also been a true inspiration to many of us here and those across the country and around the world. So, Mayor Matt Ryan.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming out tonight. I've been, as Tarik said, I studied, my undergraduate degree was environmental studies and planning policy, and I taught environmental law. Nick Andrews got me to teach environmental law for 10 years at Binghamton University. So I started, when I first heard about natural gas as the safe alternative to bridge to the future, a lot of people are excited. Even people like Bobby Kennedy Jr. were excited. And then the facts started to come out. And there has not been one person, I think, that's been stronger at talking about the repercussions of hydraulic hydrofracking than Dr. Sandra Steingraber. She also won the most prestigious award. She wrote a book called Raising Elijah. Her son is here today. Elijah's here today, and her family. She wrote a book about it, and she won the most prestigious environmental award, which pays $100,000. She didn't give that all to Tarik, but she did give it all away to the cause to fight hydraulic hydrofracking. She's straight. She's been going all over. I've listened to her speak so many times. I've had the privilege to hear her speak, and I'm so pleased that you will get a chance to hear her tonight. She's straight from, just flew in from Harvard University, that place up in Boston, you know that place? Where she was at a water conference talking about this very issue and got a very good reception. She continues to fight the good fight, and these are the kinds of voices we need, voices of reason about this industry, which is an industry in its infancy that we are being asked to be guinea pigs for. And if Dr. Steingraber has anything to say about it, we will not be guinea pigs for this industry. So, so without further ado, Dr. Sandra Steingraber.
The Heinz Award to the fight against fracking was probably the easiest decision that I've ever made. And it is less an act of philanthropy than an act of survival. And that brings me to my topic tonight. We are all, each one of us in this room, other than the 46 chromosomes that each of your parents bequeathed to you at the moment of your conceptions, you are made up of the rearranged molecules of your environment. And with every breath that you inhale a pint of atmosphere, each of us are 65% water by weight. A few days ago, I was at the University of Indiana to talk about fracking and air quality. And as you just heard, I just came from Harvard University where I talked about fracking our water at a conference on the risks to water in the future and the emerging threats to water. And of course, there's a third element to all of this environmental stuff that we're made of, and that's my assigned topic tonight, which is food. And we are obviously what we eat. Next week on October 19th, I'll be giving a talk, kind of a full-blown plenary address at the Growing Health Conference right here in Binghamton on the links between land use, farming systems, and public health, and the threats that fracking poses to the interconnections between those three things. So you can consider tonight's talk a kind of sneak preview of what I'll be talking about later on when I come back to Binghamton. But tonight I'm going to speak very personally. My family's farm, the one that I know as my farm, is in rural Illinois, and it was in the family for 4 generations. And in the 1980s, it fell on hard times. And a lot of the farms in Illinois across the Midwest did, as inflation and high interest rates and low prices conspired to put farmers out of business. So we were shedding farms, farmers were going into debt, and a lot of them were even committing suicide. You might remember that that was the origin of Farm Aid. And then in the early 1990s, some carpetbaggers arrived in the form of waste management companies from out of state with promises of riches. If you would let them build an incinerator on your farmland, they promised a new library for the village high school where my mom went to school. They promised jobs and they promised revenue. And in return, they were going to use a lot of groundwater. They were threatening dioxin contamination of crops, and our rural roads were going to be filled with endless fleets of trucks hauling toxic materials from Chicago to be burned in the ovens of the incinerators right in the middle of the cornfield. So some of these elements should start now sounding a little bit familiar. So the farming community where I grew up then was split. Farmers were on one side of the issue and some farmers were on the other. Whole church congregations were divided. Brothers were no longer talking to brothers. Those who were opposed to industrializing farmland were criticized by their neighbors who said that the pesticides that farmers used were just as bad at what the industry was proposing to do here. And then those people who were criticized for using pesticides responded, well, two wrongs don't make a right. And then the incinerator developers said it didn't matter what any of these people thought, because in fact the decision to move forward was inevitable, and there was no doubt about it that by the year 2000 there would be at least 9 incinerators in the cornfields of downstate Illinois. All right, there are none. We stopped them all. They are gone. There's not a single incinerator there. That was, until the fight on fracking, that was my big epic struggle in life, was to throw my hat in the ring with the farmers that are my uncle's friends and people that my mom went to high school with. And we did win that fight. And we won it town by town, as we did teach-in and referendums, and we elected people to office to help us in this fight. We even had a float in the local Labor Day parade that said, God recycles and the devil burns. And that was a little bit controversial in the fundamentalist Christian part of the world where I grew up. But finally what really changed things was after all of this local activism caught the attention of the governor of Illinois at the time, who then quietly changed a law, this obscure little law called the retail rate law that governs the pricing of electricity, that now made it unprofitable to burn industrial waste and generate electricity. And overnight, all of these guys just completely went away. So here's the punchline to that story. After the battle was over, the one that we won, all of those farmers who were on the side of no incinerator, who had been criticized for their neighbors about their pesticide use, thought really hard about that criticism. And so my family's farm then, after the death of my 100-year-old grandmother, began its transition to an all-organic operation. And it stopped growing corn and soybeans for export and started growing food for people to eat. And in addition, it's now considering putting a wind turbine up in the high point on the farm so that the whole village can have off-the-grid wind power to power the whole area. My cousin John, who farms in the next county, has now leased his land for wind power and supplements his farm income and puts his kids through college by providing land for renewable energy. The neighboring farm to my grandparents' farm was so excited by the success that we've had that they started their transition to all organic operations and have reintroduced animals back in the barns where they haven't been in Illinois for years and years, causing one 95-year-old neighbor who has missed the animals all these years to sit out in front of his farmhouse and just look at the sheep and the cows that he had been missing for the last 40 or 50 years as a kind of retired old farmer who lives all by himself.